Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 6,700,000 man-hours. Let me say that again. 6,700,000 man-hours. That is what the cumulative service of the recipients tonight, that is what you represent. We can't let that go unacknowledged. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. When we think of Trinidad and Tobago, certainly when I think of my country, I think of sometimes things that are not so savory, not so interesting. But I must say that I'm totally inspired tonight to have listened to the Auditor General, to have listened to how she's thanked her workers, to have listened to how she's acknowledged the function that you carry out. And the function that you carry out is absolutely important. What you really do is you ensure two pillars of our society are maintained. And those two pillars are transparency and accountability. Transparency and accountability are the only two pillars that will ensure a legacy. And oftentimes when we think of legacy, we think of bricks and mortar. You know, we think of buildings, we think of statues. But in your case, your legacy is an intangible legacy, but with such a tremendous impact. It is a legacy that were it not maintained, my country would be in trouble. All countries would be in trouble. We really have the full spectre of attendees tonight. We have those persons who have served 41 years, and then I was absolutely distracted, but wonderfully so, by the youngster who's among us. Is that a future employee? When our politicians take the oath of office, they swear a number of things. I'm sure you can think of it. They will be true to all man and, you know, all kinds of things. You don't swear that publicly, but that's what you do when you ensure transparency and accountability in our country. In preparing for this presentation, I thought to myself, you know, every major political controversy has its birth in the Auditor General's office. And I just saw the Auditor General's face frown. No, not us. That's not us. Okay, I'll modify that. Not every. Not every. But a number of public controversies have their genesis in the Auditor General's office. And that's because you're doing your job. And every single person in that office who contributes is making a significant contribution. You know, years ago we talked about the chain of command. Well, this is an example of the chain of command. And in order for you to be effective, every single person, from the person in the lowest category to the Auditor General, every single person has to play their role in order to ensure that those two pillars I talked about, accountability and transparency, to ensure that they are maintained. There's an English graffiti artist called Banksy, and that's his pseudonym, so we don't really know who he is. And again, I see a nod in the audience, and I do appreciate the fact that you even recognize this graffiti artist. And he said that, you know, we die twice. We die when we stop breathing, and then we die when the last person calls our name. Think of that. And reflect on your office and ask yourselves, which names do you remember? Which names continue to live on? Because every time those persons' names are called, their legacy continues. In doing the research, I'm not sure that you still call the name Matthew Leasing. I'm not getting any acknowledgement there. So maybe we don't call, well, there was one acknowledgement. Every time we call his name, his legacy lives on. As a member of the public, the name Errol Gregoire, for me, is familiar. Don't know the man, have never seen him, well, maybe I've seen him, but have no conscious acknowledgement. And I was told that he's passed on, but his legacy continues. His name remains. We hear about Alton Campbell, and I'm sure his name remains. We hear about Jocelyn Thompson, and when I read her biography, I said her name must remain, because that's the woman who took you into a computerized environment. And given that the person, the longest serving employee, is 41 years, I think, 42, where's that person? Who's our 42-year recipient? All right, not with us? Well, given that the next person would have been a 40-year recipient, I'm sure when they came into the Auditor General's office, it was paper, it was big books, ledgers, and when we think of it today, what is it? You look at a screen and you look at several screens and you can do all sorts of things. You do a quick search and you can look at your entire department. You can look at your entire work. The point I'm simply making is that someone to have taken you through computerization, they would have had to be a brave soul. And that name continues. And I'm very sure that the current Auditor General will continue that. The legacy, her legacy will continue. She joined the organization 40 years ago. And when I reflect on 40 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago, it was a time of turmoil. It was a time of the Black Power Revolution for me. And as a student at that time, I was particularly interested. And I was particularly interested because our current senator, Senator McCandle Dagger, I know him as Geddes Granger. Our current senator was leading a revolution through the streets. And there were several things that they were, all of us. Several things that we didn't like in our society, and there were several things we were rebelling against. But one of the things that we were rebelling against 40 years ago was the fact that there was not transparency in the hiring policies in the banks. You had to be of a certain hue to get a job as a bank teller. And that's what they were rebelling against. What is the difference between, when we talk about transparency and accountability, what is the difference between having to be of a certain hue in order to get a job and getting a job because you can present a factory manufactured degree? It is the same absence of transparency. And that is what we have to protect and guard against in our society. We must maintain accountability and transparency in everything that we do. But then when I reflect on 40 years ago, and I reflect on the global environment, 40 years ago, Richard Nixon, he had to resign because of the Watergate scandal. You know, people who do evil don't shine a bushel on it. They don't shine a light on it. They do evil and keep it in the darkness. And it is people like you who, through the work that you do, bring light to some of the evil. It may not be specifically, but by analysis, people will be able to see the evil that you do. And Richard Nixon had to leave office. He had to leave office because of an absence of transparency and accountability. Let's think of the people who joined the Auditor General's office 30 years ago. They would have joined under the leadership, at that time our Prime Minister was the late George Chambers. We used to call him Dunsey. But he has proved, he's demonstrated that history has absolved him. That he was the only Caribbean leader with the courage to say to the United States, when they wanted to invade Grenada, and they did it on the invitation of some of our CARICOM colleagues, he was the only CARICOM leader to say no. And I just want to share a quotation from Hansard that he shared in Parliament. In Parliament, the day after the invasion, he said, "To date, I have received no notification from any CARICOM member country of any intention to request assistance from the government of the United States to intervene militarily in Grenada. Nor have I been informed by any CARICOM member country that such a request had in fact been made." His legacy is rich. At that time, several persons, those persons who were going to receive 30-year awards, you had just joined the Auditor General's office. And that is the kind of leadership that you saw in our country. About 20 years ago, another cohort joined, and that was in around 1994. And forgive me if the figures are not spot on, but around 1994. And Trinidad again was just recovering from a particularly tumultuous period. That was, we were recovering from our 1990 revolution. And you know, I asked myself, what is recurring? What is it that's recurring in our society? And I asked myself, why are these things recurring? And the answer is, when the people do not feel or do not believe that there is accountability and transparency, they will take things into their own hands. As leaders in our society, because that's whom you are, I implore you, and I know I don't have to continue to demonstrate accountability and transparency, to continue to discharge your duties without fear or favor. We go back to the quotation by Banksy that you die once when you stop breathing, but you really die the last time someone calls your name. And it is my fervent wish that you will continue to live very long lives, that your names will continue to echo in the halls and the chambers of our country. Because our country at this stage, and I think for quite a few years to come, our country needs men and women of courage, men and women of vision, men and women who hold the values that were stated here today, those values of honesty and integrity, men and women who have the courage to do what is right. To the 130 persons who will receive awards this evening, we thank you. I thank you on behalf of the public of Trinidad and Tobago, because you continue to ensure that the legacy of my grandchildren will be protected. You continue to ensure that your own children's legacy will be protected. This is a rich and beautiful country, and it is a country that demands the highest standards. You are the leaders in demonstrating how we can maintain those highest standards. And I sincerely hope that you will continue to demonstrate to the rest of the public service that excellence and good values and good judgment and courage, those things can be done. It is my sincere hope that your name will continue to be called. I thank you for the education that you have given me by giving me the opportunity to deliver the feature address. I thank you for the service that you give to my country. May God bless you, and may you continue to have a wonderful experience in the Auditor General's office. Thank you.